Are you a fanboy of white PC cases? Well, I know I am. And this is the Raidmax Magnus Z23 dual tempered glass full gaming tower. So I'll do a walk around so you can get a good idea of what it looks like. And this case has several features I think you'll find distinguish it from the other players in this segment. So why don't we start with the top dust filter there. It's a hard plastic mesh screen, and underneath it has foam embedded in it. It does not come off of the top panel. And you have your basic I/O ports here. They do give you a reset button. Unfortunately, they give you a USB 2.0 port. Now on the front of the case, you have a faux aluminum look panel, and it does look real. It looks pretty attractive. So we're looking good here on the outside of the case. So why don't we take off the front panel and the top panel. And as you can see, you have a lot of slots for different fans and radiators. Now on the front bracket to the right, notice the oval ports where you can route your fan wires away from the inside of the case. That's pretty awesome. And on the inside of the front panel, it's quite deep, and it does have air slots running the length of the front panel. So if your fans are mounted on the front of the bracket, they can draw in plenty of air. Coming around to the back, there's a good bit of room between the motherboard tray and the rear tempered glass panel, so you can do some wire management. And there are some tie down points. Unfortunately, the cable ports do not have any rubber grommets. And on the back, you do have room to mount a 140 millimeter exhaust fan. Alright, so they do give you a water pump bracket, which is drilled and slotted pretty nicely, which is great. I'm going to take that off because I'm going to take off the hard drive cage. I won't be using any traditional size hard drives. So I'll put my water pump bracket back on the bottom so I'll have enough room to work. Alright, so let's take a look at the reservoir that I'm going to be using. This is a Phanteks reservoir that's been on the market a couple of years. Most of you guys have seen this. And I've got to figure out how to mount it because I don't want it to get in the way of my front 360 millimeter radiator. So the bracket that comes with the reservoir is going to mount to the side like this, and then it's going to mount to a 120 millimeter fan bracket, which is going to be in the way of my radiator. So I want to mount it on the back wall here of the case, just like that. So in order to do that, I'm going to have to slide some screws in the slots on the back of this reservoir. And this is the size screw I'm going to be using. And then here are the nuts and the washers I'll use to fasten it to the back of the case. And I'll just give you kind of an idea of what it's going to look like with the screws inserted in the slots. So I'll have to Dremel 4 holes in the case. And I'll have 4 screws there in the back of the reservoir. Alright, so I've got my radiator mounted and my reservoir mounted. Let's see if I'm going to have enough room for a 360 millimeter radiator on top. And I'm coming up a little short here. It's bumping the fitting on the radiator, and it's going to be bumping the fan on the back of the case. So I'm going to have to neck down to a 280 millimeter radiator. So I've got pretty much everything installed except the graphics card, but I do have one problem. I was able to get 4 screws into the radiator on top, but the other 4 screw holes are covered by these tabs. So I'm going to have to Dremel my own screw holes there on the top to get the radiator fully seated. And then the back fitting is impacting the 8-pin CPU cable, but that shouldn't be too much of a problem. Alright, so I'm going to be using the AMD Radeon 7, and I am going to be using a Phanteks water block for that. So let's see what that looks like. Alright, and one other thing, they do give you an aRGB hub, and this is an 8-port hub with SATA power. So if you have a lot of aRGB devices, Intermax has got you covered on this. Alright, so here are some of the components we're using. And now everything is installed and I'm ready to power on the computer, and I'll just show you the illuminated I/O ports. The white is the only color they'll turn. So let's take a look at the cable management. It wasn't too bad. I've seen better, I've seen worse. But I did have to use a whole lot of zip ties because they just don't give you any Velcro straps. So we'll come over to the other side and just take a look at the complete build. And I did end up with enough room to do everything I wanted to do. The water pump barely cleared the front 360mm radiator. And there was plenty of room to route my cables to my power supply. Very happy with how this turned out. The computer can breathe really well. Most of my temperatures are acceptable. So again, I like the way the inside of these white cases reflect RGB light. They do it a lot better than the black cases. So everything is looking good and it's pretty much finished. And I'm really pleased with how it turned out. So I'm going to leave you guys with a user benchmark result here. You guys can just kind of check it out. And I appreciate everybody tuning into this video. Hit the like button if you liked it. And if you want to subscribe, I'll probably have another couple of build videos within the next year or so. And I appreciate you guys watching. Have a good one.